Hello and welcome to the special edition of Inside Sports. I'm your host, Todd Blackstock. On today's episode, we have the owner of St. Louis FC and CEO of Worldwide Technology, Jim Kavanaugh, in studio, who along with the Taylor family are laying the groundwork to bring Major League Soccer to the STL while breaking ground with female ownership. And we'll introduce you to the president of the St. Louis Blues, Chris Zimmerman, who will discuss the exciting upgrades taking place at the Enterprise Center and Stiefel Theater. But first, we're going to toss it over to Angela Sharp at the Enterprise Center, where she was one of this year's MCs for Guns N' Hoses. Angela.
Hey, thanks, Todd. That's right. I am down here at the Enterprise Center for Guns N' Hoses. That's when the firefighters take on the police officers inside the boxing ring. And yes, those upgrades have been a talk of conversation. One thing about it, though, I got to tell you, the color scheme in here is a little bit more muted now that they got rid of all the blue and gold. But they have a lot of awesome upgrades. We'll show you those. Obviously, the Enterprise Center went through a lot of renovations. What do you think that's going to do to bring more events to town?
Well, I think it's spectacular. I think by the end of next summer, when you come back in here this time next year, it's even going to be better. I think they've done a fantastic job of making it more of an event in here. You know, it's a special place, obviously, with lots of special moments with hometown teams, but I think it can only be better created, you know, with some of the things that they've done in here. And I applaud them. They've done a heck of a job.
And joining us now on Inside Sports is the president and CEO of Business Operations for your St. Louis Blues, Chris Zimmerman. Chris, thank you so much for joining us here today, taking time out of your busy schedule.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Exciting time.
It is an exciting time. I mean, great renovations going on with the St. Louis Blues and the newly named Enterprise Center. It's still kind of rolling off my tongue.
You'll get it. You'll get it.
Coming, you know,
right? It's a little transition for all of us.
Sponsorships, you know, it changes throughout the years
Sure.
and things. But you've been a hockey guy for a long time. I mean, you know, you're growing up in New York and then you know, playing a little college in Vermont has given you a great base for hockey, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, I'm pretty darn lucky. Having grown up around the sport and having played in college, obviously I've been passionate about the game my whole life. As I started my career in the marketing and advertising world, quite honestly, I really never thought that I would be sitting in a seat like this. And so a little bit like any kid who grows up around a sport and then gets the opportunity to not only work in the industry, but then to work in the sport that they've played and are really passionate about. That's a pretty special thing.
You know, you bring a unique element to the St. Louis Blues in hockey because you've got a great hockey background. You've been in a similar position with other NHL teams, and your business acumen is unbelievable. So you get to bring those two together with the St. Louis Blues now, and you know, good things should be happening on the horizon.
Well, certainly we've been working hard over the last several years on a number of fronts, and you know, I'm a little bit different because I haven't been in the team part of sports my whole life. I started in sports with Nike on the marketing side, and then I got to move into general management there and experience that running first Nike Golf and later Bauer, the equipment company that Nike owns. So I've gotten the chance to touch a lot of different areas within the sports industry, and but in the end, you know, we're talking about fans and consumers and guests, and many of the same principles certainly I think have helped me as I've come to St. Louis. You
know, you've worked in certain elements and capacity with Los Angeles. You spent, I think, what, 4 years with the Canucks, Vancouver.
3 seasons, yeah.
Yeah, and so you've gotten to see different parts of the country, different parts of the world, actually, and having an opportunity to work with other organizations and, you know, with your business experience, you know, what's your vision for the St. Louis Blues, tying all that in together with the fans and the marketing aspects of all this?
Well, you know, I think that the St. Louis Blues, now in our 52nd year of playing here, have become a real critical part, certainly of the sports marketplace, and we like to think of, even on a broader level, a really important contributor to the community, both the city and the broader community. And so really I come into a situation where many before me whether that be on the players' side, whether it be others, previous owners, our current ownership group, which represents 16 different members of the St. Louis community who were committed to keeping the St. Louis Blues here. In the end, it's really our ultimate goal is obviously what happens out on the ice and how we contribute to getting to that championship. But beyond that, it's really looking at the role that we play in contributing to St. Louis, really to the total quality of life here.
And recently, the city of St. Louis has, helped kick in a lot of money to help renovate this arena right here to attract more events outside of hockey. I mean, there's only 41 home games a year, and there's a lot of other
Plus
dates you want to
playoff
fill.
games.
Plus playoff games too, and the Blues, have had great success in the playoffs. Haven't been to a cup in a while, but the important thing is keeping the arena up to standards and and making it competitive so you can attract other events here as well and keep the Blues happy.
Yeah, so the building was built and opened in 1994. So we're 24 years into this building. We've hosted over 35 million guests. And quite honestly, a building with that kind of use, built in the mid-90s, it's like a home that has 8 or 9 kids running around. It gets a lot of wear and tear. And so we found as we got to this point several years ago that the building, I'll use a general phrase, it was tired, and it needed to be addressed in terms of the fundamental infrastructure. We had to think about how technology had changed, and then obviously we also wanted to make sure that we were creating the best fan experience. And so all the work that we've been doing has been focused on those elements, and also with the end goal of recognizing that with the Blues representing about 40% of the events, that for us to continue to attract both the best concerts, top music acts, as well as what we think of as the discretionary sporting events and championships we compete for, we really had to address the needs of the building so that it can be competitive, both with new buildings and other buildings that were getting similar investments.
A recent example, you had an Elton John show that sold out within minutes, or probably a day. That was well attended, and people were very excited about that. A couple weeks back, there was a night when Fleetwood Mac was here, and right next door at the Stiefel Center, formerly Peabody, you had Alice Cooper.
Right.
Both were pretty close to being sellouts right next to each other, and that's a pretty good testament of rock and roll and hockey fans here in the St. Louis area.
I do think the night you referenced is a good example where you have very different audiences. I walked back and forth between the two concerts. That was an interesting thing, but it is, if you think about it, our ownership group, along with McKee family, helped reopen the theater back in 2011. It had been dormant for 20 years. The work that's going on here. So we basically have about 200 nights a year that we are bringing entertainment and sports to the downtown.
Now, there were several different phases of the, construction upgrades of the facility here. Can you walk us through, how it started, the beginning stages, middle phases, and then what we should expect in the future?
3 years ago, I would say, was when we first started attacking some of what we felt were the most critical things. And again, some of that was infrastructure. Some of it was really fundamental technology. So the building had no Wi-Fi until 3 years ago. It was just over 10 years ago that the iPhone was introduced. If you think about how people consume the games, their interest in taking photos, in sharing information to their friends when they're here, pretty dramatic change that we had not addressed until we put Wi-Fi in. This next thing was high definition broadcasts. Same thing. We had a broadcast control room that had gone in 1992 and was not up to date. And so Some of those things were stage one. A year ago, we did a number of major projects. Maybe the most obvious and evident to everyone is our big, wonderful Jumbotron behind us. But in addition to that, the entire arena started to be addressed, including new lighting, a new sound system. We put in a completely new piping and rink system to replace the original. And so that was really the next major stage of the project. And then this summer, we have replaced the mezzanine seats. We have developed several new areas, added roughly 30,000 square feet of space for people to gather. So that's more about the amenities around the arena. New restrooms, new concession stands. I would say at this point, 3 years in, we're probably 80 to 85% complete on the work we see doing in total.
You know, I'm looking around, I see different colors. I remember when this place opened up, people called it the Barney Dome because it was purple. And now you've got gray paint or silver, whatever you want to call it. It seems to have lightened it up. And speaking to Dan O'Neill earlier, he says that it's really great for the fans. It kind of lightens things up and it offers a fresh atmosphere.
Yeah, so yes, the Barney seats, I love that. I hadn't actually heard that, but people are still wondering how we got to purple.
Mauve or purple.
Yeah, so we've replaced about a little less than half the seats. We'll complete that next year. I mean, one of the things when we replace seats, obviously comfort. We also felt like we needed to recognize that in addition to blues games, there are other events here.
Sure.
And so we have our big, wonderful scoreboard, what goes on the ice, our fans. We have plenty of things to communicate that this is the home of the blues. And we're quite sensitive to that, obviously. But in addition to that, we want it to be a building that every other event that looks at this says, this is a high-end, premium experience for their guests, for their fans, for concert goers. And so a lot of our work is also recognizes that it's more than just blues games that happen here.
Well, it's a good look for out-of-town visitors as well, the players' wives and families and fans that like to travel and visit. Got great corporate sponsorships. Enterprise, the Taylor family has always been fantastic here in St. Louis. Worldwide Technology, and where do you look when you don't see Bommarito somewhere as well? And they've done a lot of neat seats up here in kind of a new corporate area that used to be seats.
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, the sponsors, we're incredibly lucky to have the kind of support we do from the St. Louis community. We're thrilled to have Enterprise step in following the TD Ameritrade purchase of Scottrade. So that's a great St. Louis iconic company that has just been a great supporter of the Blues as well as the National Hockey League. So that's a great partnership. Next door, Stiefel came on and became the naming rights partner for the theater. So two new partners who we expect to be with for a long time, and then many others throughout the building that have stepped up and really are a critical piece of keeping the Blues competitive.
Yeah, before we take a little, a quick little tour here, let's discuss the St. Louis Sports Commission and the Missouri Valley, because I know both of those operations are very excited about what's taking place here. You know, the Valley's been here for a long time. They enjoy having their neutral site here in St. Louis, and Doug Elgin, Jack, Mike Kern, they do a fantastic job. And then Frank Viverito and the guys over at the Sports Commission are trying to bring big-time NCAA events here, and it seems like it's working.
Well, as many people had heard the story, the SEC, which had awarded us last year's event, came to the Sports Commission, the arena and the Blues back in 2014 and said, we're really concerned about the state of the arena. And we really need you to step forward and elevate a number of the key elements to the building, or else we're going to consider moving the event. An event that probably generated $10 to $15 million in it. And so it was that initial salvo that came from them and the recognition that other groups like U.S. Figure Skating, and the list would go on and on.
Even wrestling.
We're going to start to say the building, it does not qualify, it doesn't meet our standards anymore. And that was going to create critical losses of events. And so the Sports Commission has been a tremendous partner, and yeah, we believe now we're back in the running for every key championship. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get everyone we go after, but we are competitive. We have to compete both with new buildings in cities like Sacramento, Detroit, Las Vegas, and then other markets like Atlanta or Boston or Chicago, where they've done these types of major renovations to buildings that came on in the 90s. And the work we've done puts us back in place. And whether it's the NHL All-Star Game we're working to bring here, U.S. Figure Skating Championships, Gymnastics Championships, these are events that we know that we're back competitive again for.
Well, I'm very excited about this, Chris, and let's go ahead and take a little stroll through some of the areas of the Enterprise Center. I'm getting it right.
Yeah,
I'm still getting used to it, you know.
You're doing well.
And Stiefel, formerly Peabody,
Yes.
so let's take a little stroll through the building.
That'd be great.
All right. And one of the things the St. Louis Blues wanted to do to enhance the fans' experience is upgrade the food. So while doing that, they brought in local vendors, local restaurants like High Point, Lion's Choice, and Sugar Fire, just to name a few. And the food now here at the Enterprise Center is top-notch. There's a whole lot of new things starting up here.
Yeah, so this is off our 14th Street, or actually our new Ford entrance.
Okay.
This is the Anheuser-Busch Beer Garden, and we wanted to create really a whole area that was a little bit a tribute to, obviously, our partner, Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah, and Chris, when you used to come into the 14th Street exit here, or entrance into the Enterprise Center, there was a bar here. And then the retail aspect was down that way. It was a little smaller room, and now you've got this.
Yeah, so really we had our retail space was under 2,000 square feet. It made it one of the smallest spaces for any arena. And so we did want to find a spot where we could grow that and give people a better shopping experience. Obviously offer them a wider variety of products and all those good things you get to do with more retail space. And so that's what we've done here. The response has been great. And you know, I think a lot of the work that we've done is trying to create more space, a better dining experience because you have more room, more options. All of those things were considerations as we updated the building. But beyond that, it's also the fundamental structural systems, the HVAC, the roof, all of those things. There's still elements, what probably more of the behind the walls work that's left to be done. We've been talking with the state legislature over the last 3 sessions, and we believe that there's a role for the state to play as well in helping this next and final stage. So we'll be back at that as well, and then we will have gotten to a point where we really believe we will have addressed all of the core elements that make this a great arena.
Right, sponsors, the city, and the state, and the team all come together, and we're going to have a great time here and bring a Stanley Cup to St. Louis.
Well, thanks.
And once you get off the escalator at 14th Street and you're upstairs outside of Portal 32 and 33, you're right here in one of the major renovations of the Enterprise Center. Right here used to be the line where it ended. And then it was nothing but air right here. Now I'm walking into a new area, a couple 2,000 or 3,000 square foot area of space, gathering space for food and drinks, and a beautiful addition to the Enterprise Center. Look how big this new gathering space is here, with a phenomenal view of City Hall through the big windows right here at the Enterprise Center. And joining me now is the CEO of Worldwide Technology and one of the owners of the St. Louis Blues Group, Mr. Jim Kavanaugh. And Jim, I tell you what, so many nice things have gone on with the renovations at the Enterprise Center and Stiefel. I had a chance to take a tour with Chris Zimmerman as we're intertwining here, and the improvements there are amazing. The city of St. Louis put a lot of money into this situation. You know, there's always debates about where the public funds should go, but if you look at the whole picture, you have to spend money to make money, don't you?
Yes. No, you absolutely have to spend money to make money. It's a great statement. I look at it from a business perspective, especially where we are today around innovation. And if you think about all the things that are going on, new technology, same thing is happening in a sporting world. And Chris Zimmerman, fantastic guy. Know Chris well. He's done a great job with the Blues, but he's creating a different experience at the Enterprise Center. And he's connecting and creating these neighborhoods that may connect to the millennials or connect to kids and families. So it's a great experience. I'd recommend everybody try to get to a Blues game if they can.
Why is it important to have an ownership coalition as opposed to maybe one family or just one guy owning the Blues?
I think it can work either way. I think a lot of it depends on the leadership. So with the Blues, there is a group of owners. Tom Stillman is the lead owner, but there's a group of owners that I think why it works for the Blues is that all the owners that are involved are also involved in the community and very committed to the community. So they're committed to the Blues. They see the Blues as an asset and something that's very valuable to the community. And that's why it works. If it's a bunch of individuals that are doing it for financial reasons, then I think you create a bit of complexity that is not good. In this case, the Blues, I think it's worked out well. And I think it will continue to work out well. In our case, with the MLS, I think we also have a unique ownership group that we have two families, the Taylor family, who is deeply integrated into our community and has been incredibly impactful from a business perspective, a community perspective, a philanthropic perspective. And then also the Kavanaugh family that has had an impact on the community with Worldwide Technology and the things that we're doing in the community. But also, I'm personally very, very integrated into the soccer community and have a deep passion for that. So you bring these two families together that are really committed to the community and to St. Louis. And then you bring a sport, a global sport like soccer that can have such an impact on our community and our kids and programs. We're just very excited about it. I think good habits and good deeds are contagious. And so there's a lot of that going on in the city of St. Louis right now. If you look at all the construction that's going on downtown, over $8 billion of projects that are underway, whether it's with St. Louis University, BJC, the NGA, National Geospatial Agency, that's building out today. And all that is in the downtown area. You look at Arch to the Park that was just put in place and rolled out, and that's, I think, just had a fantastic impact. And you look at all that coming down Market, which the stadium, which we're proposing, would be right next to Union Station, that Bob O'Loughlin, through his economic development, has renovated Union Station and is looking to put in place a Ferris wheel, a very large Ferris wheel and an aquarium in Union Station. It would be right next to the stadium that we're proposing to build. I just think that kind of multiplier effect and that contagion can be such a positive thing. And not just one alone creates the kind of momentum in a city. And if you think about the things, we've had way too many bad things being promoted about St. Louis. St. Louis is a great place to raise a family, to create jobs, and we need to start focusing on the things that are positive about St. Louis. And I believe that MLS, to your point, it just kind of comes right down Market Street next to Union Station. Union Station, incredibly beautiful building, and then a lot of the things that Bob is doing, Bob O'Loughlin, inside of Union Station, and then connecting the MLS stadium next to it. And a big focus of what we have also is to make sure it all integrates. So we want to look at the flow of things and to make sure that it's not just a stadium, put in the middle of, you know, an area. It's a stadium that is integrated into other events and other things, bars and restaurants and Union Station. So we're very excited, you know, the greenway, the, you know, arch to the park. So all of that stuff we want to be integrated as we build this out.
It kind of flows into Midtown and then into Grand Center and into the Fox Theater District. So it's a really nice segue there. One of the requirements, I think, for MLS to come here is that it needs a downtown stadium. Why do they want a downtown stadium and not one out in a floodplain like Maryland Heights?
Well, I would say that the big reason is through experience. So the MLS has been around for some time now, and they've learned a couple of things over the years. And one is that the stadiums need to be downtown in the most dense areas of whatever city and not out in the suburbs. So they want density, and they also want mass transit. And those are two key things. And then they do look at where specifically in the downtown area. And looking at where we're proposing for this stadium is just, everybody believes it's an ideal location. So those are two big things that they look at: location, downtown in a dense part of the city. They look at mass transit. And then, you know, another couple key things, they look at the ownership group. Do they have the financial wherewithal? Are they local? And are they committed for the long term? And that's the same thing that we're looking at with the MLS and the stadium. So we spent a lot of time, I was up in Kansas City looking at Kansas City's stadium. I was just out in LA this week meeting with LAFC and LA Galaxy to look at the design of their stadiums and how they are creating this off-the-charts fan experience that we collectively want to bring. And how do you create these multi-purpose stadiums that will be hockey-centric and soccer-centric, but you can use them for other events, as you mentioned, to bring more economic activity to the city of St. Louis. And I think we can do all those things, and I'm very excited about what the Blues are doing with the Enterprise Center and then what we're going to do with this new MLS stadium. When they want, you know, to host an event in St. Louis, they want to see it's going to be a great experience for their fan base. And so they also want to see that specific stadium or that arena. And so in the case of the Blues, the Enterprise Center, they want to see that's going to create that experience. And that's the same thing that we're looking at again with the new stadium that we have, is to create that experience that other organizations want to come to St. Louis. And again, it creates this force multiplier of economic activity and the continued building of different things downtown. The one thing I would also say just around the fan base, and I've got to say it up, you know, just going out, we've got great fans here in St. Louis. If you think about the culture and the following of the Cardinals and the culture and the following of the Blues, and then I look at where we're going with this MLS team. We have a Division II team, St. Louis FC, that has a group called the St. Louis Luligans that are just off the charts passionate about the game of soccer and our city and what we're doing. And they're just incredibly fired up to see how do we continue to build on what we have today. So you see this, it creates community and it brings people together in such a positive, passionate way. It's just very exciting for the city of St. Louis.
Thank you very much. That
My
was
pleasure.
awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks. And that's our show for today. We'd especially like to thank all our studio guests, St. Louis Blues and Worldwide Technology, for making this show possible. I'm Todd Blackstock. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.